behaves itself, and I'll try and speak so that you can hear. I'm not going to be able to read my script, so maybe I'll need a flashlight or something. I have some very exciting things to show you this evening, but first of all, I wanted to know how many in this audience lived on Depot. Anybody here this evening who lived on Depot? I know there's two ladies right here. Harry Burkholder's daughters, Catherine and Anna, Catherine Lehman and Anna Musser. And I see a hand there. Gerald Moore, is that you? Okay. And I think Joe Burkholder was here this evening. Yeah, Joe Burkholder, Ed Burkholder's son. You'll have to call out your name. This one here. Daniel Byers. Okay, and that is, your father was Daniel Byers. That's correct. Is Esther here this evening? Did she make it? Okay. All right, Esther Byers, the oldest daughter of Daniel Byers. Esther Breckville, the oldest daughter of Daniel Byers. I've been to their home site once, and I think the second time. It probably is, shall you say, the nicest site yet on Depot in which you can still see visible landmarks of a barn and house, the basement where it was. There is actually yet at that farm site a Sonneberger water tower, concrete water tower. Must have been one of the earliest ones at that time. Do we have everybody? Okay, your name? Oh yes, Harold. I didn't recognize you from here. Thank you for being here.
My grandmother and my grandfather, each owned their own farm when they got married in Leonard County.
Okay. All right.
And they did live on it for a few years. But,
Yes. And I have been to your home site too. I remember being there at least once. Back along the mountain close to Keeper's Store. 400 acres. Okay. All right. All right. Well, did we get everybody? Okay, go ahead.
I'm the daughter of Major Snow, Major and Grace Snow. We were right at the very edge. We were the part that wasn't to be taken at the beginning, and then when they took 7,000 acres, like our farm was included.
Okay. Was that at Culbertson or Runkey Spring?
No, Culbertson.
Close Culbertson, yes. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Now, I did bring a camera along, and I did that for this reason. I want a group photo of those of you who are here this evening and lived on Depot. We'll try and find a spot here as soon afterward as we can. Also pleased to have my wife, Rosine, here this evening. She's the youngest child of Roy and Mary Jane Diller. And 2 weeks ago, we celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary, and our 5 sons are here with us. Thank you. Also, my parents, Nathan and Esther Wadel, are here this evening. My grandfather on my mother's side was Henry Eversole, and he grew up on Depot. He was the son of Daniel Eversole. Then he died in February of 73. In January, I believe it was, of 82, my grandma, who was Martha Yeager, married her brother-in-law, Sam. And they lived at Mannheim. And they were yet young enough when they first got married to pay us weekend visits and come out and stay at our house and go along to Strasburg on a Sunday morning. And I assume that in one of those visits, Grandpap Sam got to talking to Clyde Lehman about Letterkenny and the fact that he lived there and went to school there. And so Clyde arranged for a Sunday afternoon visit into Letterkenny Arbor Depot when I was 14, and I was privileged to be along on that trip. And so let's get a start here. This is kind of like my opening photo. This is Kiefer Road right here, and this is Harry Lehman's barn. North Mountain and Letterkenny Arbor Depot is over here in this corner. When that's on the afternoon visit, we first of all went to the Daniel Eversole farm site, and this is a photo of that, I think, when the David L. Lehman family lived here. Archie, Alice, and Eva grew up at this farm, right next to the Strasburg Meeting House, and there you see the Strasburg Church and its horse sheds. I think this is the new barn. The original barn burned in 1925, and there is a long story that the layman's tale about the burning of the barn, and it's being rebuilt. But this is the Daniel Eversole farm site. Daniel Eversole married a Kaufman. This actually was a John Kaufman farm. He married a Kaufman girl, and they lived here on the farm for a while. My grandfather would talk about his father being caretaker of Strasburg. On a Saturday evening, he may go up there and start the fire in the stove. Grandpa Sam also talked about mowing the cemetery with sickles, and they had a little saying in Dutch that they would go over whenever they were sharpening the sickle. I have it written down, but I can't spit it out now. So we went to this site, and we could stand up in the barn building. He could point out where some of these other buildings were as he remembered them. That day, we also went over to the Strasburg Cemetery, and this is a recent shot of that. That's my parents there. This is the Strasburg Cemetery where he had a young brother, Daniel, buried. I think he died at about 2 years of age. Grandpa Sam was born in 1905, and he was old enough just to remember the little box in the coffin in the funeral that day. From there, I did something here. There we go. From there, we went over to Oak Grove school site. And we get there and we get out of the vans, and Grandpa says, "Oh my, there are those same oaks I played under as a boy." And this photo really does not do justice to the oaks that are there. Oops, I didn't want to go there yet. I'll learn this after a bit. This really does not do justice to the oaks that are there. You can kind of see by the people standing around how big those trees are. I'm going to venture to guess that they could be virgin trees, as beautiful and magnificent as they are. This photo represents, back in 2012, the Strasburg congregation celebrated 200 years, and we stopped at this site. And the folks pictured there had ancestors who went to Oak Grove. Well, he also went on to say, I had to tell you something else. 3 of the dumbest boys went to this school at Oak Grove. And this is Oak Grove, a very typical one-room school with its 3 windows, and a door in the center and a window on each side. The road at Oak Grove School went right up along the porch. I think this is one of the prettiest of the one-room schools in Letterkenny, simply because the porch roof goes across the porch, the whole length. But anyway, he said 3 of the dumbest boys went to this school, and he named them. Charles Carver, Charles Rotz, and Sam himself. But he said, look where those 2 men got to in life, and I just remained a poor dumb farmer. And he told us also how Charlie Carver got his start in the trucking business. He went to his dad and said, I went alone to buy a truck to haul canned milk, back in the days when the farmers put their milk in 10-gallon cans, and it was hauled by truck to the town, to the creameries. And his dad said, okay, that's fine, but if you run up too many bills, I'll sell you out. Well, apparently he didn't run up too many bills, because Charles W. Carver Trucking is still a viable business in Franklin County today. Some years later, I was along with Clyde Lehman on a tour and stopped at this site. And he got to spinning off this story I just told you. And an older lady spoke up and said, that is exactly correct about the 3 dumbest boys. She said, occasionally, and maybe more than occasionally, Charlie Carver had to get a switching because his lessons were not done. Back in the days when reading, writing, and arithmetic talked to the tune of the hickory stick. And things have changed, obviously, since those days. But you know, it does take a lot of hard work and discipline to run a successful business. And maybe some of those switchings taught him some responsibility and put some effort into being a successful businessman and being responsible in that way. Charles Rotz had a lumber business on 5th Avenue beside Wayne Feed, and neither of those businesses are there today. I might also mention that the Carver family does have roots back into the Strasburg Mennonite congregation through Deacon Henry Rife had a daughter, married Carver, and they were Lutheran. A lot of you older ones remember Ambrose Carper. I remember Ambrose Carper. We got the Christmas caroling for him on numerous occasions. He lived to be 102 years of age, but when we went there, he always asked for the Reverend, and we would have a word of prayer with him. And he had a kind of special connection even to us as Mennonite people up into his last. Well, I do not remember a time when I did not like history. And this Sunday afternoon visit into Letterkenny Army Depot when I was 14 simply blew open my interest in these people and the story behind the commandeering of their properties by the United States government. This is another shot of the Oak Grove School. Here you see a number on the building, and we'll get to that later. They can't take my home in heaven. The close-knit agrarian community where Mennonite farms lay side by side lived in relative peace and quiet until the storm clouds of World War II brewed heavily. The substantial 1903 meeting house served the small congregation well. These peace-loving people went about their normal farming duties, not knowing what men in high places of political authority were planning. While the war seemed far away across the Atlantic Ocean, it was to come very close home, close enough to take their houses and farms. Due to the ongoing war in Europe, government leaders in Washington, D.C. had early in 1941 predetermined the need of an ammunition depot on the eastern seaboard. They also wanted this installation far enough inland to avoid an easy attack by enemies, yet close enough to the Atlantic harbors for the convenient shipping of ammunition. Now, we know that Adolf Hitler made his blitzkrieg attack on Poland September 1, 1939. And from there, it's kind of like he did a kind of hopscotch around European countries, gobbling them up. And the United States was determined to stay out of this, although they found it difficult when it came to Great Britain and Hitler's air raids on Great Britain. And it would not make it for Churchill. Great Britain may have also fell to Hitler. And so the United States was giving aid to some of those countries, and they saw what was going on and needed an ammunition depot. I think one thing to remember when Letterkenny first came in here, that's what it was, a storage place for ammunition. Government officials scouted out numerous sites in Pennsylvania and neighboring states. They were looking for natural geographic defenses, climate, and topography suitable for ammunition storage, accessibility to rail facilities, adequate power and water supplies, and the immediate availability of a trainable workforce. The research to come to a conclusion on which locality for a munitions depot took several months. Government officials made visits and asked questions of the residents, who after a while figured out the reason of the surveys. The Strasbourg congregation first heard this alarming news in the fall of 1941. It was either when they went to clean the church on a Saturday afternoon or a preparatory service. That's what Clyde always told me. As I study this some more, I'm having trouble jiggling some of the dates to fit. But it was the fall of 41. In fact, as it may have been only by the fall of 41 before there was a notice came through the public opinion paper. Well, when the local citizens realized their homes could be commandeered or simply taken by force by the United States government, they organized themselves to oppose a depot on their beloved farmland. And Ambrose Carper was one of those who led in that opposition with signing a paper. Even weeks prior to the final decision by the U.S. government, petitions were written up and signed by hundreds of local citizens who took them to Washington, D.C. and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. These signers also offered what to them seemed a more desirable locations in Fulton and Lackawanna counties, Pennsylvania. The petitioners voiced two major objections to the ammunition dump. One was a sentimental attachment to farms that had been in the family's possessions for generations. And secondly, they resisted the destruction of 32 square miles of prime agricultural land. If you've ever been back on even a cemetery tour, it is nice farmland. Several levels farmland around, especially down around the Culbertson area. Well, the Mennonites had their own petition. Roy Yeager and Charles Bless took a petition around among the non-resistant community. These signers appealing to the government that they cannot, because of our religious belief, voluntarily consent to our homes and our church property being used for military purposes as under the present plan of the federal government. Bishop Christian V. Martin heard of this and asked to see the paper, upon which he granted his approval. Claude H. Lehman remembers seeing the petition and believes his mother signed it. And this petition was taken December 10, along with the other petitions to the War Department offices in Washington, D.C. This paper was among Ada Yeager's papers that Marlon Yeager's family gave me. Do note the date of November 28, 1941. This has no signatures on it. I assume that Ada just simply copied over or had a second copy of what then was the real petition that would have had the signatures on it. It would have been nice if there would have been a copy of that as well. All of this was to no avail, for in December 7, 1941, the Japanese warplanes flew unnoticed to Hawaii and bombed one of the naval bases located on one of the islands. This brought a swift and immediate decision by the War Department for the Chambersburg location. For in 11 days, on December 18, 1941, Secretary of War Henry Stimson ordered the purchase of nearly 21,000 acres of Letterkenny Township. The determining factor in the selection of Letterkenny Township for the site of the installation was the people. Get this. Many of whose families had lived in the area for generations. Their local history, dating in many cases to pre-revolutionary times, attested to three outstanding personality characteristics: loyalty, industriousness, and a marked ability to withstand nervous strain. How they figured that out, I don't know. And Claude H. Lehman would add a group of non-resistant people. Surely the government knew they could take this with little resistance. In fact, one of the sites that the government had cited out was Charleston, West Virginia. And when government officials went in there to do their surveys and look around, they were shot at. And they got out of there. The only instance I know of a gun being pulled here in Franklin County, the Chambersburg location, was the farmer down along, well, Culbertson wasn't. This is what I was been told by older fellows, that when they came in there to move earth, when the earth moving machines came in there, I'm not sure if he took aim, but he had a gun in his hand and his sons restrained him. That's the only instance I know. Now, you know, some of you may know other instances, but that's what I know. Well, Samuel Bricker, a member of the Horse and Buggy Old Order River Brethren, called for a prayer meeting to be held in his house, which is the present-day residence of us, my wife and 5 boys. Harry Burkholder walked from Rocky Spring to Cheestown for this only public prayer meeting held about the government takeover. He and Claude H. Lehman were the only Mennonites present, where prayers ascended to the throne on behalf of the United States, which had been attacked. They also petitioned the Lord to protect their land from being taken. Now, another place that the government was searching out at this same time was northwestern Lancaster County, which included the Bosler's Mennonite congregation, Lancaster Conference. Well, they had a prayer meeting too. And whenever the government chose the Chambersburg location, they said we didn't pray hard enough. Shame on them. So, anyway, it's all in divine providence, as he moves among men and governments. Within the purchased boundaries were 5 churches: Oak Grove United Brethren, Maple Grove Union, Upper Strasburg Mennonite, Pleasant Hill Brethren in Christ, and Zion or Carpers Lutheran. 8 cemeteries, 8 schools, displacing 953 people, or nearly 1,000, in 250 families. The grand purchase price was $1,700,000, which calculates out to roughly $83 an acre. Now, today you're going to pay roughly $1,700,000 for one farm. To give you a little bit of perspective of what's going on. Most often, they purchased the property directly from the landowners, the government did, realizing that they could not place their value on sentimental value. Let's take a closer look here. This is Kiefer's store, back toward the mountain. Kiefer's store had the telephone in those days, and messages went through Kiefer's store. And I assume that maybe you didn't have a telephone, and if you wanted a telephone, you went to Kiefer's store to use it. People would gather at Kiefer's store to discuss this whole issue of the government takeover and the depot coming in. In fact, this is where Kiefer Road gets its name, which I showed you earlier. There are some rather prominent citizens who live along Kiefer Road. One of them happens to be the treasurer of this organization. Sorry, Harry. Kiefer's store was back toward the mountain, back close to Carper's church. Fact is, I think, am I correct, Joe Burkholder? You told me your farm was close by Kiefer's store as well. Kiefer Road leaves Edenville Road and went all the way back to the mountain, but just beyond Gokenhour's, or Ralph Gokenhour's place, it makes a sharp bend to the left, and you're then on Boundary Road because it's following the boundary of Letterkenny Army Depot. But the old Kiefer Road went on back. This is Carper's Church. This is a view from the cemetery, and you're looking in the door there. This is Oak Grove Church. There was a gentleman here earlier this evening, I believe his name was Kuhn, mentioned something in relation to Oak Grove Church, and this is the church at Pleasant Hill, Pleasant Hill Brethren in Christ. It's located close to Honeytown. There was a little cemetery there, Brethren in Christ Cemetery. At the same spot, there is a larger Mennonite Lehman family burial plot, Ben Lehman family, and we have some descendants of Ben Lehman here this evening as well. Thanks for being here. This is Fairmont School. This is at Honeytown. Let's see. You Burkholder girls go there to school? Catherine and Anna went there to school. At least I know Neoma did. You guys did as well? Catherine, did you go there to school? Yeah. Okay, at Honeytown. Maple Grove School. Maple Grove is back toward the mountain. Summit Level, and Sunny Point. This is places where people live ordinary lives as we do today. One of the ways in which I like to interpret history, or to get young people maybe to understand a little bit of history, is to try and visualize yourself in the same shoes, in the same position. What would it be like now? Picture yourself where you live now in the communities in which you rotate in, and all of a sudden government officials show up, and we're going to take this from you. That's a little bit the impression you can work from. The original boundary, as outlined by the government, was to have followed some of the present-day Edenville Road. It would have included the farms of Widow Mary Lehman. And this is Harry's farm here. Take note to the Stone Arch Bridge, which was destroyed by 2 floods in the summer of '96. This is Back Creek coming down here from the mountain. This is Rocky Spring, and I'll show you the head of Rocky Spring later, but it dumps into Back Creek right here. Back Creek will go dry in a dry summer. Rocky Spring never goes dry. That's the old farmhouse. Here is a wagon load of maybe your corn or something. We have a pickup here. That's the Lehman farm. Clyde remembers that he walked the farm with the appraiser, who had an auger in his hand, who was checking for topsoil depth. But the family also says that their mother never said anything about moving. They were originally in the Letterkenny Army Depot. The family figures that Widow Mary decided that the Lord would take care of her, as he had taken care of her in the death of her husband Daniel B. Lehman in 19 34. So she said nothing, but Martha had just recently married to Uncle Aracoons, and they were living on a farm in Scotland, and Martha did look for places for them, for her widowed mother and siblings. This is Mal's Funk Farm. Wilmer Funks lived there today. That would have been included. Sam Funk remembers that they went looking for farms, which they found inflated. Prices raised due to the fact that people were moving out, and they put their prices of the farms up outside Letterkenny Over Depot. This is Archie Lehman Farm, or David L. Lehman Farm. Dales live here today. That would have been included in the original boundary as well. But to the relief of many, the public opinion on December 13, 1941 announced an outlined new boundary. And this was no longer included in it. On December 30, 1941, the small village of Frogtown, where Catherine Burkholder, the widow of Bishop John S. Burkholder, lived, was chosen by Lieutenant Colonel D.L. Myers as the first headquarters for the Letterkenny Ordnance Depot. He picked out the house of widow Burkholder and 4 other buildings. She had 1 week to vacate. Maybe I should point out what's happening here with my little map. By the way, some of you have come this evening with maps of former homesteads in Letterkenny. There's a nice big one back there on that table. I forget the gentleman's name now that brought it in, I'm sorry. Anyway, it's there for your looking. They are available. Sometimes whenever you go on cemetery tours, they do have them available to hand out. And they are very nice maps to get you oriented to where people live. But you will notice I have Catherine Burkholder circled here. This is Frogtown. Here is Good Intent School, and a Joseph Rotts, and some other names there. This little village. It is not out at the Culbertson Way. It's on back in. We do travel through this spot whenever you do go on cemetery tours. So he picked out her residence as part of this. She had 1 week to vacate. This seemed a little bit stringent. And so Harry and Sam, her sons, went to visit their lawyer. And the lawyer did contact the government officials, and the government officials said, "Do you know who you're talking to?" And the lawyer shot back, "Well, do you know who you are talking to?" And it so happens that this lawyer was a pretty highfalutin lawyer who had won numerous cases in the big cities of maybe Baltimore and some of those places. He knew what he was doing as a lawyer, but he only managed to get an extra week, and so she had 2 weeks to vacate. Well, in assessing the situation, Catherine Burkholder says, "They can take my home on earth, but they can't take my home in heaven." And this is Mrs. John S. Burkholder and her daughter Barbara. And I don't think this little fellow is with us here tonight. This is the songbird. This is Ira. He is nicely dressed up there with his suspenders and long tie. And this is Ira with his grandmother. John S. Burkholder had a daughter who married Henry Songbird. She lived on a little 3.5 acre place, which the government gave her $2,500 for. The widow and Barbara went to live with Harry's until a place was ready for them at Henry Sonnenberg's place. This is off the Brickville Road. Ralph Klein lives here today. Doris and John, and I guess some of the girls too, lived in a house here at the end of this farm lane, their time. For 4 years when I was a teenager, I delivered public opinion newspapers, and this was on my route, and John and Doris were on my route, and I would bike down to Ralph Klein's, and she would always tip me every month for bringing the newspaper in the farm lane. Now let's take a little closer look at this village of Frogtown. Here, whoops. Here we have the Good Intent School. And here we have the administration building. And it looks to me to be a new concrete road there. These photos were dated, some of them, March 21, 22 of 1942. The photographer was in there just like 8 and 9 days prior to when gates were shut April 1. Very nice to have these. That's the administration building. This is the parking lot at Good Intent School. Here is the school. This is where Charles Marshall lived 1 year. This is where the field house is at Good Intent School. No, the first aid house, sorry. And they're talking about the first aid house here. Oh, wait a minute, I think I need to back up yet again. Well, Linda and I punched something I shouldn't have. Yep, sorry, Linda, you're going to help me out.
No, you just aim, hold the clicker up and aim it toward the computer.
Now we did it. Okay. That building has a cross on it. That would be first aid house. This building, this house still stands. We travel past that on cemetery tours. Just another shot here. Joe Roth's place, remodeled as a lunchroom and office at Good Intent. I think this was the photo I wanted to show you. This one. Hit it again. Oh. If in fact this is the Joe Roth's place, as I study the map, in this photo, this is Catherine Burkholder's place here, which you can't see very well, but right there. This is where the widow Burkholder lived. This is Sunny Point School. This is West Mill. And I must admit, I don't know a lot about West Mill. This appears to me to be the mill here, mill building with a stream here. Can anyone tell me what this stream is, or maybe that's just a lane? I always had to have a stream of water for there to be a mill there. Anybody know?